Hello, and welcome to the Anonymity in Qualtrics Introduction Training Module. I am Paul Byrne, Research Data Services Librarian at Syracuse University Libraries. What we will cover in this module are the difference between anonymous surveys and confidential surveys, what information Qualtrics collects by default, and methods of anonymizing your Qualtrics survey. First, let's discuss the difference between anonymous and confidential. Anonymous means that even you do not know who has responded to your survey. Even if you have sent your survey to specific people, there is no information contained in the data that could uniquely identify that person. Confidential, on the other hand, means that you may know who has responded and what the responses were, but you promise not to reveal that to anybody else. Making the survey confidential is a lot easier than making it anonymous. Confidential is, for all practical purposes, the default for Qualtrics. You may, however, be required to make it anonymous because you're surveying a special at-risk population, or you might be asking for highly sensitive information, or the grant funder, or IRB, simply requires it. You need to confirm with the IRB or funding agency whether your survey needs to be anonymous or confidential before you start building your survey. If your survey has multiple waves, namely you are sending more than one questionnaire to respondents at different points in time, then your survey cannot be anonymous, because you'll need to be able to match each questionnaire at each time for each person. Otherwise, you will not be able to properly analyze the data that you've collected. And remember, even if you don't ask for a person's name or their social security number or email address, it still might be possible to uniquely identify respondents using other information that you have asked for in your survey. This will need to be addressed before you share your data with anyone. Let's go over some of the default information that Qualtrics collects. Qualtrics collects some information by default and adds it to each record. This information could be used to uniquely identify respondents. First, it collects the IP address of the device that the respondent was using when they answered your survey. This can uniquely identify a person if they are the only one that uses that device, such as a computer in their office or at home. Qualtrics also collects the latitude and longitude of the person when they submit the survey. By default, this is based on their IP address and is only accurate to the city level, so you'll know that the person was somewhere in the city of Syracuse when they answered your survey. If, however, you're using the Qualtrics app on a GPS-enabled device, then it is an accurate representation of the respondent's location when they submit the survey. Qualtrics also collects the date and time that they started answering your survey, as well as the date and time that they submitted your survey. And for surveys distributed using a panel, Qualtrics also collects their name and their email address, which are certainly identifying information. Even though Qualtrics collects all this default information, you can still anonymize your survey. The first method is to provide an anonymous link that you can post on a web page or send in an email. You can also use the Anonymize Response option in the Survey Options dialog. The anonymous link and the Anonymize Response option can be used together, and they can also be used with a panel. Don't worry, you can still gather voluntary contact information even if your survey is completely anonymous. So, in conclusion, you must decide early on what level of anonymity you will need. You need to be aware of the default information that is included in the responses. and all the different ways of making your survey anonymous and what effect those methods will have on the data that are collected. Thank you. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Our contact information can be found on the web page. Please be sure to watch the other modules on anonymity in Qualtrics, Anonymity in Qualtrics How-To, and Anonymity in Qualtrics Voluntary Contact Information.